Real Madrid won the Supercopa semi-final derby against Atlético Madrid, but that performance comes with warning signs, huge warning signs, and if Real Madrid don't fix them going forward, Real Madrid will continue to lose games. Look, let's not be emotional, let's break this down properly, because these are 5 things that we learned from Real Madrid versus Atlético Madrid. And let's just start with the goals. Look, fantastic goals from Fede Valverde. I mean, I've seen him try that quite a few times in the last couple of years, and he's finally paid off. Unstoppable free kick, one of the best free kicks I've seen in a while. Oblak had just had absolutely no chance, and we know Fede has that in his repertoire, he has that in his weaponry, and he did it so fantastically well. I've got Rodrigo getting the second goal of the game, and to be honest, they're both goal scorers. The goals made by, Fede as well. Great pass, great movement by Gonzalo to create that space for Rodrigo to make that run. And that's what Gonzalo does. He creates movements for the strikers. But the only convincing people to me was probably Fede and Rodrigo. I thought Fede was great at right back again, showing again why he probably should be a full-time right back for Real Madrid. And I just think his qualities and his ability is perfectly made in that right back position. And Rodrigo, again, he could have had a goal in the first half, did fantastically well to, do the defender, but just had a lackluster finish, to say the least. So, I just think Fede and Rodrigo were the only guy yesterday who had, great moments in the game, and I thought consistently well, they did really well. Apart from that, I thought Real Madrid were really, really bad yesterday. Of course, we're going to get into that in a second. And look, we also have to talk about Alonso's tactics. Now, look, I said before the game that I wanted Real Madrid to really press high and really make this an intense game and really squeeze Atlético Madrid, because of course, Atlético Madrid were missing Barrios, and with no Barrios, you are lacking that, ability in midfield. Now, Koke is good enough, but he's like 35 years of age. So I just thought Real Madrid, if they could squeeze Atlético Madrid high up and press them really high, they won't be able to pass it out of the back. Whereas Real Madrid kind of was in a mid to low block in a 4-4-2 and allowed Atlético basically a lot of the time just to pass out really easily, and in build-up Real Madrid themselves constantly went long, and the same issues happening again. The midfield were just unable to pass it out of the back, and there was no chance creation from this midfield. Now, of course, Real Madrid's lineup again was unchanged from the Betis, so the midfield was Camavinga, Tchouaméni and Jude Bellingham in the midfield. So it can work at times, but to be able to have a creative midfield, these guys just can't do it. And how many times have I made this video, guys? How many times have I said that this midfield is just not able to pass out the back? And we've seen it again in the first half. Real Madrid, well, in the full game actually, Real Madrid only had an XG of 1.21. Now, Atlético Madrid had 2.29 XG. So why are we allowing a midfield of Koke and Gallagher, or whoever else is in that midfield of Atlético Madrid in general, to create more XG than us? That is not good enough, and they had more possession than Real Madrid as well because of the way Alonso set this team up. And look, Alonso constantly from the build-up wanted to give it to Courtois, and Courtois to go along to Gonzalo. Look, Gonzalo did win the ball a couple of times, but it's not good enough at this level to constantly do this in the long run, because yes, it might work in some phases of the game, but if you're constantly going long and constantly, relying on winning the first ball or second ball, that is not going to work. And especially against Atlético Madrid, they have big centre-backs, so they did manage to, get the ball away a couple of times and win it off Gonzalo, and Real Madrid did not win the second ball. And of course, if you don't win the second ball, Atlético Madrid keep getting the ball and they can then go and attack you. So it's an unsustainable way of playing football, in my opinion, when you've got guys in the team that can play okay, they can pass the ball a bit. I feel like we need to do it. But look, on the other side of the coin, maybe Xabi Alonso just realises that this midfield just can't pass out the back to that, ability. Of course, we don't have a, deep line playmaker, which I've said before. Tchouaméni, again, on the ball had an awful game. There was many times where he got dispossessed. There's many times where Camavinga, again, tried to run his way out of and carry his way out of pressure and gave the ball away, while Alex Baena nearly scored. So I made this video before about Real Madrid midfield, why Real Madrid needs Wharton and guys like Stiller. And this was exactly the point, because Atlético Madrid are not an amazing pressing team, but they do it to an okay level. And the fact that they was able to get, errors from Real Madrid's midfield and kind of phase Real Madrid's midfield out of it, kind of proves my point that this Real Madrid's midfield is never going to be good enough in a big game. And then we have to talk about Vinicius Junior's performance. Of course, this was a game where Vinicius Junior had to be the main man. Of course, Kylian Mbappe was not going to play this game. He's still back in Madrid. We'll get on to Mbappe in a minute. Vinicius Junior had one of the worst performances that I've seen in a long time now. He did track back as well defensively in the first half. But in the second half, he got tired, and his on-ball, performance, I mean, he didn't create nothing. He didn't look threatening whatsoever. If you look at defensively, he didn't track on the goal by Sørloth. So, of course, before the game, like I said, Real Madrid cannot allow Atlético Madrid to make easy crosses into the box. Now, if you watch that second goal, Vinicius Jr. lost his marker, and Sørloth was able to free from Asensio by the cross, and it was a goal. So there you can see how little details like that matter, and Vinicius Jr. not obviously covering that man or following that man allowed Atletico Madrid back in the game, which is very dangerous at that point in time. Now, of course, Vinicius Jr. did get substituted and for Arda Güler in the second half, and of course there was a Simeone incident as well, which is another thing that we learned, that Simeone is just an insecure little man. Why is he going and telling Vinicius Jr. that Fiorentino is gonna get him out? Why are you saying that as a grown-ass man and you're a manager of the other team? And that's what Xabi Alonso, very to his credit, went up to him after, in the situation and said, listen, you can't effing talk to my players like that. Exactly. Why is he allowed to talk to players like this? This is embarrassing on his case. The last thing that we learn, of course, is that Real Madrid will be playing Barcelona in the Supercopa final, a repeat of last year, the last couple of years. Now, Kylian Mbappe was now obviously out of that game before, but Xabi Alonso came out after the game and said that he will travel, and he's probably with the players at this moment in time, and he will possibly play in the final. Now, look, for me, I don't see why we need to risk Mbappe. Of course, Gonzalo Garcia didn't have the most amazing game, but, why do we need to risk him for a Super Cup final? Of course, Xabi Alonso's job being on the line, maybe that's what it is. But look, Mbappe will be joining the team. Whether he starts or not is another thing. For me, I don't think he should start. Another news coming out today that Rodrigo apparently suffered a hamstring injury. So again, he's going to have a test today to see if he's going to play on Sunday at all. So look, this is a very, very dangerous time for Real Madrid because you don't want to risk players. But of course, against Barcelona, against the high line, Mbappe would be an absolute cheat code. We've seen it in the La Liga when Real Madrid beat them 2-1, of course. Mbappe is a cheat code against that high line. So look, style makes fights. I think Real Madrid could look a lot better against Barcelona. But look, Barcelona are going to have a lot for Real Madrid. And of course, Barcelona smashing Bilbao 5-0 is a worry, because if Real Madrid are not able to, especially in the midfield and the centre-backs, pass it out of the back, Barcelona's press is 10 times better than Atletico Madrid. And Barcelona will force a lot of turnovers. And Barcelona, of course, are very, very, clinical when it comes to up front with Rafinha, Lamine Yamal, Ferran Torres at this moment in time. He's incredible. So this is going to be an absolute war of a final. And look, I am not ready for this final. I'm not positive about this final. I'm not convinced. But look, that game showed warning signs for Real Madrid. So yes, Real Madrid are through to the final, but it doesn't mean that everything is good. Like I said, the warning signs are there, and all the things that we learned today shows that if Real Madrid do this against Barcelona on Sunday, might be a really, really bad result for Real Madrid. So look, let me know your thoughts in the comments, of course. Like, share, and of course subscribe to the Real Madrid content channel, the best channel in the world. And of course, until next time, Real Madrid.